I often get asked about the difference between offset and redraw, and really, I suppose which one's a better option to choose based on individual circumstances. The answer, I suppose, is not a simple one, which is the purpose of recording this video, I guess. And it makes it a little bit more complicated given that there's usually a difference in pricing for the offset and redraw products. So, for example, a redraw product, so what some lenders call a basic product, where there's no offset account available. Usually comes with a lower rate. It comes with usually no ongoing fees, so it ends up being a lot cheaper overall. So the question is, like, do you really need to pay the extra to have an offset account? Is it actually going to be worthwhile? Under normal circumstances, you compare the two options side by side, and redraw ends up being a lot cheaper. And the functionality is very similar. You with an offset product, you have an offset account separate to the loan. So I'll just do a quick sort of scenario here. So if you imagine that with an offset product, you have an account over here. So let's just pick on ANZ as I always like to do. So you would have an offset account, like an account with ANZ. So I'll just put offset account here so we know what that is. So you would open just a standard transactional account with ANZ. It'll have your ATM card access if you want to. Some people would throw the card away because they're going to have a large amount of sums and just from a security standpoint. Direct debits can come out of there. Your wages can go in. So it's a really good sort of fully functioning transactional account. And what happens over time is if that's how you sort of manage the account, let's say that your income is 5K. Oops. Go back to black so you can read it. Let's say it's 5K per month going into this account, and then let's say that the repayments are coming out of the account. I'll just use a thinner one so you can differentiate. Actually, I'd get fancy and use an arrow. And then let's say that the repayments coming out of the account are 2K per month. Then let's say that your living expenses, because obviously you're not going to be going up, you're going to have to spend some money. So you got 2K per month for the repayments, and then just say coming out of there, I'll use an arrow down. Let's say that you've got living expenses of $2,000 per month. So I'll just say 2K per month living. I'll just say living. There you go. So what that means is that with $5,000 per month, 2K goes to the mortgage, 2K goes to living expenses, and so what you have left is $1,000, and your I'll use something a bit thicker, and I'll just use red. So what happens is your savings then goes up by $1,000 every month, and so the more that your balance increases on the offset account, the less interest that you pay on the home loan. And that happens from day one. So 5K goes into the offset today, then you're saving interest on $5,000 today. So then if you have, you have a grocery bill of $100, now it's $4,900. You're saving interest. Then you have a hairdresser appointment. Then it's whatever it happens to be. And so obviously, your offset balance will sort of continue to reduce as you're spending the expenses, but it's calculated daily. Say it's 5K per month. 5K if the interest rate is 3%, and depending on when you're watching this video, there may be a lot more than that, or much less. Who knows? But so say it's 3%. That 5,000 sitting in your account, it's saving you somewhere around $150 a year in interest. If instead you choose the option like a basic product where there's redraw. So over here, same thing. Knowing your living expenses are $2,000 a month and your payments are 2K a month, you might actually change your payments to 3K a month, or you might opt to do that either automatically, so the bank just takes 3K per month, or you may put in an extra $1,000 a month. Totally up to you. And so what happens is you start to pay down the loan over time, and you see the balance following that. I'll remove that. I just wanted to show you. So it's sort of that light green line there. So you can see that the loan balance is reducing over time. So if we were to look, say, and look, the offset balancing increasing by $1,000 a month here, or the loan balance reducing by $1,000 a month here, makes no difference. There's absolutely no difference to the interest that you pay in both of these scenarios. Where there is a slight difference is that with the offset account, $5K goes bang straight into the account from day one, whereas with the mortgage, it's the $2,000 or the $3,000 that goes into the account from day one, and then so that extra $2,000 that you have sitting there, which is going to be used for living expenses, which is going to reduce over time. So you don't get the full benefit of the $2,000 for the whole time. It's only, once you start using that, it starts to reduce over time. So it's just the interest on that. So it might be like the difference of like, I don't know, $30 a year, $40 a year, something like that. So in reality, if you're going to save 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, bucks a year in interest by choosing an offset account, but it's going to cost you $1,000 with interest and fees, then clearly the best option, or the cheapest option, I should say, the cheapest option is going to be the offset product. Oh, sorry, the basic product. So that would be the cheapest option. Where it gets a little bit tricky, and the reason for recording this video, is if the property is an investment, or if the property is going to be an investment. And some people don't know this until it actually happens. Some people buy a two-bedroom unit, feel they'll live there for a long period of time, and then sell it. And then in 5-10 years' time, income's higher, the mortgage has been lower, and they're like, actually, you know what? We can afford to rent this out and keep it now. So that's definitely an option. So what happens is, say for example, in 10 years' time, your loan balance now is reduced, and so say it's down to here, and I don't know, I'll just make up a figure. I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but just say for example, you've paid down your loan by $100,000 in year 10. Then let's say that your offset balance has been increased here to $100,000 as well, because instead of putting in $100,000 into your, instead of putting the extra $1,000 a month into the loan, you're putting an extra $1,000 a month into the offset account. That maths doesn't really add up, but I suppose the reasoning behind putting a figure in here will make sense. So right there, you now have $100,000 sitting in your offset account, or you have $100,000 in redraw. Either way, you can access either of these sums to use for a purchase of an investment property, or sorry, for the purchase of another property. So here I'll say that you're purchasing another property over here, and whatever it is, now you've got your $100,000 deposit. So where it gets a little bit tricky, this $100,000 here, let's say for example this becomes an investment, and this is going to become a home. This $100,000 here that's sitting there in redraw, if you take that out of the loan, you're effectively reborrowing that money. It's called redraw, but it's classified by the tax office. It's classified as reborrowing. So if you reborrow $100,000 and use that for a home purchase, it doesn't have to be a home purchase. It can be a car, holiday, anything that's not tax deductible. So there's things like shares and other kinds of investments that could be tax deductible. But anything that's not tax deductible, this $100,000 that you're borrowing is not going to be tax deductible anymore. Even though it's against an investment property, it's not about what property it's against. It's about the use of the funds. So if the use of the funds are for non-tax deductible purposes, that $100,000 no longer becomes tax deductible. So for example, if your loan's $500,000 now, and in 10 years you pay it down to 400,000, using purely paying everything into the actual loan itself. That 100,000 the loan balance now being 400,000, that 400,000 is your tax deductible loan. If instead you pay it into the offset account, then you take that 100,000 out. You can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't matter what you do with it. That's your money. It's sitting in your account. Yes, it's saving interest on the investment loan, but the tax office doesn't really look into that. They're more just going, well, that's 100,000 of your savings. You know, whatever you do with that is your volition. So if you use it for a home, if you use it for an investment, if you use it for holidays, whatever it is, you go to Vegas, put it on roulette, it doesn't matter. This actual loan here wasn't impacted at all. Yes, your interest will start being higher on the investment property, which is not a bad thing because it becomes a higher tax deduction, but you can go and use it elsewhere. So to give you an idea on how that affects things, let's say, for example, that's quite big. Let's say, for example, that you have 100,000 that comes out of the offset account. So, you know, and say one thing to remember is that, you know, if you're buying a home and you have 100,000 deposit, you take 100,000 out of the investment, your investment interest goes up, but then your home interest goes down because you're like, you know, say the home was 500 grand, you're like, well, it's 500 grand, but with my 100K deposit, it's actually a 400K loan. And if in my investment property had a balance of 400, but now I've taken 100 out, so it's gone up. So basically, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So the interest that you pay is going to be similar because it's like you're paying more on the investment, less on the home. So I'm ignoring that side of things for the time being. The difference is, though, if you use the offset funds, you pay 100 less in interest on the home and 100 more on the investment. Whereas if you use Redraw, you get you're borrowing money from the investment, which is at 400K. You're borrowing money and paying that towards the home. So technically, you're borrowing the full amount for the home in that scenario. So what all that means is that 100,000 is not tax deductible. So what does that mean for your pocket? Well, let's say, for example, that the interest rate is 3%. So that's $3,000 per year. That's how much interest you pay on an investment loan. And then let's say that your tax rate, and so what happens is the interest that you pay on the investment, it's tax deductible. So it says that, you know, if my rental income from a property is $20,000 a year, and my interest on my loan, my council rates, my property management, all of those sorts of things is $25,000. That's a $5,000 loss, which means you get a tax refund. If for example you make a profit, say a $2,000 profit, then you got to pay tax on that. So profit is good, but if you could choose between paying more interest on the home and getting no deduction, or paying more interest on the investment, even if it's negatively geared, but you get a deduction, always better to get the deduction, and pay less interest on the home. So in this particular example, say it's 100,000 at 3% interest rate, and then say that your tax rate is 37.5%. That's $1,125 per year that if you use the offset account and you took that money out, it's $1,125 potentially better off that you'll be if you had have used the offset account instead of Redraw. So paying off $100,000 in 10 years is no mean feat. You know, it's tricky to do. Depending on what your personal budget is. Some people actually do a lot better just by absolutely putting everything they can towards the home. Some people pay barely anything off and they just say, well, that's my mortgage repayment, and their income grows over time and they spend money on other things. And then when they're ready to upgrade, they'll just sell and buy and have more equity in their home. But in this particular example, I'm using 100K. So the more you save, or the more that you pay off your loan, the more crucial this becomes. If you're not going to pay anything off, it probably doesn't really matter, to be honest. So in this example, 1,125. So if you took it out of the Redraw, then the 100K is not tax deductible. So you're just paying more interest based on a home loan. So how does that work out? So let's say, for example, you're comparing a $500,000 loan. So I say $500,000 loan, and say that you're being offered a rate of 3% as a basic product. So that's $15,000 a year in interest, or compared to an interest rate of 3.3%. 16.5. So that's going to cost you an extra $1,500 in interest to choose the offset product. Plus, say there's a $395 annual fee, so it's $1,500 plus $395. You might save, like, let's say you've got a credit card that's costing you $150 in fees per year. The bank might give you one, free of charge. So you can subtract that. There may be some other fees and things that you save on by picking a package, and it's all going to be in the product comparison. But there might be some other fees that you can save as a result. But yeah, generally speaking, it's sort of uncommon that people will be doing things so regularly that there would be multiple fees being paid. And when I say that, I mean like variations to the loan. Like splitting the loan after settlement, or doing random things like that you sometimes get fee waivers if it's a package, and sometimes you don't if it's a basic product. Redraw, some people find that annoying. Say if you get an ANZ loan, you might have to set up an ANZ transactional account to transfer the money over, but you can still get your salary paid in. It's no different to an offset account, so that's fine. So functionality-wise, there's not a huge difference between the two, but you can see that the scenario I told you before, probably about $1,125 in interest in tax offsets that you would have, either got back as a rebate or as a tax refund, or less tax that you'd have to pay. So you save $1,125 by choosing the offset account, but it probably costs you about $1,745 in this scenario. Now, that's a big difference in the rates. It's probably not always going to be that much of a difference. If the difference was only 0.1, I can work this out in my head. I don't have to do that, but 0.1. It's $500. So if the saving was 0.1 plus the $395 annual fee, forget the credit card. Just imagine you didn't have one or you don't need one. So $895 compared to the tax offset or tax refund, or tax deduction, then it's $1,125 in rebates in tax offsets versus $895. So then the key is, I'm paying an extra. I'll use the one before. So I'm paying an extra $1,750 for 10 years just to have the privilege of, in 10 years' time, getting that tax offset. So you're like, all right, so I'm going to pay $17,500 in interest. It's not really that, because obviously the loan balance is going down, but we'll just use this as an example. So I'm going to save $17,500. I'm going to pay $17,500 in fees and interest. Only then after that, so $17,500 divided by 11.25. So that means I'm going to have the loan as an investment for another 15.5 years after that, to make back the extra interest and fees that I paid for having an offset account. So the question is, and then sometimes we see people, they have the best intentions and they choose offset, and they're like, I'm going to keep this, and then I'm going to rent it out, or it's already an investment. I'm going to keep it as an investment, then buy a home. And then in 10 years' time, they're like, oh, actually, I want to borrow to my max, and the only way I can do that is to sell the property. So then you've paid $17,500 in extra in interest and fees, and you get no tax rebate, no tax offset later. So then you're like, well, what was the point of that? I didn't really get any benefit at all. So, I don't know if this makes the decision any easier or harder. But it's really important to know. We do have some clients that just their situation improves dramatically, and they can pay the loan off really quickly. I mean, if I did this again based on a zero balance in 10 years, the difference is huge. And then I would almost insist on having an offset account. If you're in the reverse, you're like, no, I'm not going to pay $1 extra. then it's just totally not worth paying extra. If there was an example where the offset products was an extra fees and extra interest, then it would be a much easier decision because it's like, hey, why not? But that doesn't always happen. It just depends on where the lender is at the time. I hope this helps, and if it's raised any questions, obviously, as you know, you can reach out to our team. Thanks.